children with communication delays and speech and language challenges often have trouble following directions. Heck, children without speech and language delays have trouble following directions sometimes. So on today's episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast, I am going to show you how to teach a child to follow directions. And we're going to start with our friends who are just starting on following a one-step direction, all the way up through school-age children who need to work on more complex directions. So we're going to break it all down for you here today. I am your host, Carrie Clark. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I am the owner of Speech and Language Kids. I am also live recording this inside the hub at hub.speechandlanguagekids. And so I'm going to be taking questions throughout from our members inside the hub. If you would like to join us on a live recording of the Speech and Language Kids podcast, you can join us in the hub as well. All right. Okay, so for those of you who are with me live in the hub, you can put those questions in the chat as we go along. But today we're going to talk about following directions. And this is an area that I feel like comes up with most children with speech and language delays. It also comes up a lot in children who don't have any speech and language delays. And in particular, we see this a lot with children with attention problems, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or autism. But like I said, just any old kid off the street can also be struggling with following directions. And the reason for that is that it really takes a lot of different pieces and makes the brain work in a way that puts a lot of things together. We have to be able to hear the direction. We have to then remember and process what the direction said. Then we have to be able to retain it long enough to actually do that thing. And then we have to actually execute. And if there are more than one step, we have to remember and organize all of those steps and not get distracted along the way. So you can see there's a lot that goes into following directions, which is why it is so hard for so many children. So I'm going to break it down. We're going to talk about 3 different levels of teaching a child to follow directions. We're going to start with our little bitties, our toddlers, and go all the way up through school age. So, hey, welcome guys. Those of you who are in here with me live, if you have questions or if you have specific cases that you want to talk about in relation to following directions, you guys can put those in the chat. Hey, Tiffany, welcome. All right. So like I said, there's 3 different levels we're going to talk about today. And this is straight from my therapy pathway for following directions. If you're new to me, my pathways are these overarching plans that tell you which individual skills to teach in order to help a child overcome a specific challenge in the area of communication skills. So this one is following directions. It's one of our language pathways. And so we start off at our beginner level with just very basic directions. And I am talking one-step directions at first, and then we get a little more complex as we go along. But at this beginning level, we're going to be looking at one-step routine directions, one-step novel directions, and then expanding that out into 2-step directions or directions that contain a specific concept. So let me explain what all of those are. So a routine direction is something that comes up naturally throughout their day. It makes sense based on the context around them, and it's something they've heard before. A novel direction then is going to be something that is almost out of the blue, where it doesn't naturally follow what just came before it. Maybe it's a direction the child's never heard before, or it's just something that's out of context. Okay, so if we are on our way out the door and we're walking out the door and I say, oh, put your shoes on, that's a one-step routine direction. We always put our shoes on the way out the door. Now, you wouldn't know that by looking at my own children who are 8 and 11 years old and will often get to the car without their shoes on. And I say, what are we forgetting? Because they have, again, forgotten that they need shoes to leave the house. So it is a routine direction, but it's one that a lot of kids are going to struggle with. But that's what I mean by routine. It's part of their routine. It's part of their natural day. Now, if I were to be on the way out the door and I said, oh, everybody stop, touch your nose, and ask everyone to touch their nose, it's still a one-step direction, but it is a novel direction. It is not one they were expecting, okay? So routine directions usually develop first. We usually see a little bit of participation in those routine directions early. Novel directions may take a little more time. Okay, so that's kind of where we start with the directions. Now, what does that look like when we're actually doing therapy? So if they were to come to me in my clinic and we would be doing therapy with them, I would be doing this through play for the most part, because if we're working on simple one-step directions, this is probably either a young child or a child who really is going to learn better through play. And that is most children. Most children learn through play. They've done research. Play is where our sweet spot is. So we could be playing games and I could say, let's make him go up, up, and we would move him up, right? And so we would be using what we have and I would be giving directions and using this play as the scenario. Now, we might also be working on routine directions this way by pretending to do certain types of routines that are familiar to them. Okay, we're going to put the baby needs to go to bed, so let's do our bedtime routine. What do we do first? Oh, we need to brush our teeth. Put the toothbrush on the teeth. And so there's a direction that they might hear in their bedtime routine, right? Or maybe we're getting ready for dinner or we're playing some sort of house, right? All of those are ways to do that. But we can also work on directions within those normal routines, and we should as well work on them within the routines as they come up. So if you are a parent or if you're working with coaching parents on how to do this at home or a teacher doing this in the classroom, we want to think about the directions we're giving, make sure those directions are very clear, not using some sort of figurative language, right? So if we want them to sit down, we need to say, sit down, not take a seat. Because take a seat is actually figurative language. You don't want them to take it anywhere. You want them to sit. So thinking about how we word things and then finding ways to help make them more successful in following that direction. What does that child need to successfully follow that direction? So we might stop and make sure we have their attention before we give the direction. We might keep our direction short. Sit down. We might use a gesture, maybe a sign language or pointing to their chair or tapping it. We might use some sort of physical cue. We might have a picture that shows a child sitting and show them that picture while we say sit down. So those are all different ways that we can help them follow that direction. And the idea is that you want to provide the supports that they need to follow that simple direction, and then we want to fade those supports out. Okay, so the first time I show you a picture of a person sitting, I say sit down, I tap the chair, and then maybe I just kind of give you a little nudge to help you. Oh, yep, there's where you sit down. Yes, and so you sit down and then praise. We're going to do lots of praising, right? You sat. Good sitting. Thank you for sitting. Okay. And then we do our thing. The next time then maybe we can say, sit down, show them the picture, tap the chair, and wait. And we see if they can do it a little more independently. Then maybe the next time it's just sit down with the picture, and then we wait. And then we see if they can do it. And of course, if they can't, then we provide those additional prompts. But we want to give them the opportunity to follow the direction independently before we add on all the prompts, because we don't want to do those forever, right? And then we eventually get to the point where they can just follow that direction without any prompts at all. And when they can, then we can add in some new directions and practice the same way. Okay, so that's two different ways that we can do it. We can do it in therapy where we're practicing and we're playing and we're making it fun, or we can do it in those natural interactions where we're providing supports and then fading them back. So that's where we're going to start, is with the one-step directions and that are routine and then novel. Okay, so now if we're doing novel directions, maybe we're all at circle time and we're going to do some clapping, right? So we're going to say clap 2 times and we're going to clap, or we're going to say, have everybody put your hands on your head. And so we can give these directions during a book reading activity, during circle time, during play, that are not ones they would normally hear, but it's getting them in the habit of following the directions. And we can do it the same way. If we need to provide visuals, if we need to provide gestures or physical support, if we need to model and show them what we want them to do, and then we fade those back. Okay? Now, once a child is pretty good at following one-step directions, then we can expand this out to 2-step directions. And again, we start with routine and then go towards novel. So a routine direction, we're saying, okay, it's time to go outside. Go to the door and grab your shoes. So that's 2 steps, but they're related, right? They're not 2 random things. It's, oh, I need my shoes. So yes, I have to go to the door to get my shoes. That's where they are. And then I have to get the shoes. So we can give 2 steps that are related to what they're doing. And again, we are just going to provide whatever support that child needs to be successful. So if it's pictures, if it's gestures, if it's pointing, if it's modeling, if it's showing them a peer or a classmate who's doing the thing that they are supposed to be doing, right? If everyone's lining up, we can say, look, your friends are lining up. Go stand behind so-and-so and quiet voice, or whatever your 2 steps are. So we can do those routine ones first. Then we can work on practicing novel 2 steps. Okay, so clap your hands and then touch your nose. So we're now asking them to start processing this information and understanding what those 2 things are, keeping them in their mind while they make the 2 steps. And so we can do this with pictures as well as doing this with the words and the gestures and all of that. Now, I will say we do have a therapy plan inside the Speech and Language Kids Hub that has some multi-step directions like this. So if you need that, we've got a therapy plan, a materials kit that will allow you to do that. So you can find that at hub.speechandlanguagekids. Just search following directions and you'll find that. Okay. The other thing that I will start working on at this level, at the beginner level of following directions, is following directions with spatial concepts. So by spatial concepts, I mean on, off, under. Those are words that commonly come up when we are giving directions in the natural environment. We might ask them to put something on something else, or put something under or in. And so understanding what those different spatial concepts mean is really important for helping them follow those directions. So for a child who is working at the beginner level of following directions, I will also introduce these spatial concepts, and those we can do through play. We can have little games where we're making things go on or in or under, and we can practice those that way. We can also pause when we give a direction in any sort of natural interaction that includes those spatial concepts, and we can remind them, remember, under is like this. See, it needs to go under, not over, but under. And so we can show them, and then we can help them follow that direction with that spatial concept. And we can use repetition because we need to practice these over and over again for them to understand. Okay, those of you who are with me live in the hub, let me know what questions you have on that. And I will start in on the intermediate level. So once they've got that, once they've got some basic 1 steps and they can start to follow some simple 2-step directions, they can follow those spatial concepts fairly well, then we can work up to the intermediate level of following directions, which is when we're going to be looking at longer, more complex directions. So now we might be working up to 3-step directions or even 4-step directions. Now, if you're working with a toddler, we can just stop right where we were on that beginner level and come back to this later if they need it, because toddlers usually can't follow a 3 or a 4-step direction, and that's fine. So this is more looking at these older kids. Late preschool, early elementary would be where we're expecting them to be able to follow a 3 or a 4-step direction. And so again, we've got our therapy plan has following directions all the way 3 and 4 steps. So that can be really helpful because sometimes it's hard to think of those on your own. But yes, we practice the same way, right? We give 3 steps, we provide the visual aids, we help them through it, we remind them what the next step is, and then we gradually fade those supports back. And again, you can do this with routine or novel directions. You can start with routine and then go to novel. And then at this point, we also want to start working on following directions with temporal concepts. So temporal concepts are time concepts, and in particular the words before and after. That is super helpful for following directions as well, because sometimes those directions are phrased as, make sure you zip your backpack before you leave the room. And if they don't know what before means, then that's not going to be a direction they can follow as easily. They might leave and then zip their backpack later, and meanwhile, everything's fallen out, right? And so being able to introduce those concepts of before and after and helping them follow directions that contain those concepts is really helpful at this level too. Now, I will say let's say preschoolers or elementary school students, especially those with attention challenges or language delays, are really going to struggle at this level, and they may struggle for a while. They may need this extra help and these extra supports for a while until it really starts to stick. Like, for example, my own sweet children who are still struggling to follow my directions at home. And some of that is attention, and some of that is memory, and some of that is the language processing piece. But we can help these children in the classroom and at home by giving them visual checklists where we actually write out the steps or have little pictures if they're not reading yet, by breaking longer directions down into shorter bits, by giving them support, reminding them what the next step is, helping them stay focused. So just keep in mind that you might not be able to just fix this right away. We might need to support them in following those directions over time until they're at the point where they really start to be able to do this. One of the things I will do with my own children is if I'm giving them a multi-step direction, I will have them repeat the steps back to me so I know they understood. And then we might even use some sort of gestures while we're repeating and practicing it so that we can when they are trying to remember what those steps are, then they have a little gesture or a little rhyme or something that they can fall back on. So looking at different ways that we can use memory strategies and make it a little more engaging so they're more likely to remember it. Okay? All right. So that's beginner and intermediate. Then we get to our advanced level for following directions. So at this level, now we are shifting our focus from helping them do basic directions, which they should have pretty well at this point, to now we're looking at multi-step directions in real-world situations. So this might be classroom activities, classroom tasks that they're getting these directions. There might be academic instructions, such as on a worksheet or a test. These might happen in their daily routines where they are being asked to do multiple things and keep track of these different tasks as they go through, okay? So this actually reminds me of one of my clients I had once who I thought she was doing really, really well on her language skills and had no trouble following directions with me in therapy. But I went to the classroom teachers and I was asking, okay, what are you seeing? How is she doing? We have an IEP coming up. Do we still need services? And they brought up that multi-step directions were a big challenge for her. She was not able to follow those. And so I went back to therapy and I worked with her and I had her do 3-4-step directions. She nailed them, every single one. So then I said, okay, let me go observe what's happening. So I went into the classroom and I watched her, and she would get, a multi-step direction. The teacher would be giving everyone this direction, and she would do the first direction. And then somewhere on the way to the second step of the directions, she would get distracted by this friend. She would start talking to this one. She'd drop all her books and then have to pick them all back up. And by then she was lost and she had no idea what the rest of the directions were. And so what I was able to see was it was not just the language piece of, do you understand the directions? She definitely understood them. It was the distractibility of the classroom. So then it became, okay, how do we maintain focus? How do we remind ourselves where we were and get back on track when we get diverted? And so that's what we're looking at this advanced level. We are looking at being able to listen, problem solve, and carry out these multiple steps all while in the regular environment, right? Where there are distractions and there are going to be things that sidetrack you, okay? So at this point, we want to kind of dig down and try to figure out what that child or individual is specifically struggling with. Just like I did with this friend, go into the classroom, go into the home if you are a home therapist. Really start to take some notes about when you are seeing them struggle and what were those directions. Were they routine-based in terms of, this is our morning routine and we're just trying to get out the door? Or are they multi-step questions that contain academic concepts? Is that where they're getting tripped up? Is it when there's lots of distractions? And so by being a detective, you can observe the different factors that impact their ability to follow directions. And that's where we can apply the strategies. So we can look and see, okay, what are some strategies we can give them? What are some modifications we can make that allow them to be more successful in following those directions? And then especially for older students and teenagers, we really want to be focusing on how do we teach them to use strategies and tools to help themselves follow directions. Because I'm not always going to be there standing over their shoulder asking them to, oh, don't forget, step 2 was this, right? So we need to give them ownership of being able to say, okay, I know that I have 7 steps that need to be done in order to get my homework done tonight. How can I organize those steps in a way that's going to keep me on track and keep me focused so that I can complete everything and I don't miss anything? Is it using a planner? Is it writing those things down? Is it putting them to music, making a little song out of it so that I can remember all the steps? Whatever it is that they need, we want to give them a bunch of strategies to try, first of all, and then allow them to choose the ones that feel good to them, that feel authentic, that help them, that are meaningful to them, and allow them to use those independently throughout their day to manage themselves, because that's what we want. We want them to become independent in their ability to follow complex directions of whatever that looks like for them. Okay? I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say about that. So at this point, it really becomes working with the classroom teachers, working with the parents, and working with the student themselves to see, okay, what are the types of directions we're struggling with? What are some strategies we could try? Which ones do you like? Which ones do you not? And then giving them the tools, sending them out into the world and saying, okay, go try it, and then come back to me and tell me how it went. So that's a piece of this is carrying this over into their regular life and helping them to find those tools that work for them. All right. Those of you in here live with me, pop over into the chat and tell me what you think. Was that helpful? Do you have questions? And if you have any specific kids that you're struggling with, you can pop that into the chat. Don't give me any names or personal information, but you can ask questions about specific following directions challenges that you might be seeing in your clients. Okay, so like I said, there are therapy plans and therapy pathways inside the hub for this following directions. Those 3 levels are included in the following directions pathway, and then each of the individual skills that I talked about, such as 1-step directions, 2-step directions, those all have therapy plans, which have workbook pages that you can use and you can practice in therapy if you need something a little more concrete to practice from. And then we also have our session builder tools. So these are our AI-powered bots, and one of them will allow you to do sentences or prompts. And so this one's a great tool to generate a custom list of directions to follow, especially when you're working on the novel directions, because sometimes it's hard to think of new directions to do. So what you can do is go into this bot that's inside the hub, and you can say, I need a list of 3-step directions that are all about zoo animals. And it will give you, okay, we're pretending we're at the zoo, and here's a 3-step direction, and here's a 3-step direction. And you can put whatever topic you want. So whatever that child is interested in, you can generate a list of 3-step directions, 2-step directions, whatever you need based on that topic. And then you can use those in therapy to keep it fun and engaging and keep them engaged with you. Okay? So to check that out as well. But I think we hit everything on following directions, and I'm not seeing any questions. If you guys do have questions, you can pop over to our discussion board inside the hub that is available on the freebie plan. You can hop into the discussion board for any level of membership you have, and you can ask us what questions you have or what challenges you're seeing, and then we'll be able to respond and get some suggestions from the community as well. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what other topics you'd like to see in the future, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye, guys.